We left off, we're in 2 Samuel. We left off last week in chapter 2. And let's just review briefly the beginning of chapter 2. Initially, we have, this is, of course, right after the deaths of Saul and Jonathan, and David asks God, should he go up to Hebron? And God says yes. And we learn that when Hebron, of course, is the capital of Judea, and it is there that his own tribespeople, the house of Judah, crown him king. Okay. Right after that, we learn that he's already in a process of trying to consolidate people around him. And he reaches all the way up north to the furthest edges in the north of Israel to create a relationship with the people of Yavesh Gilad. And he compliments them on the way they showed such respect for the bodies of Saul and Jonathan. And we see his message to the people of Yavesh Gilad, but we don't hear a response from the people of Yavesh Gilad. But what we do see is how dignified and noble David is, and he is really trying to consolidate his power, not by creating tension, but trying to create relationships and peace. Okay, and then we move on to the next part, and we meet Avner. Abner is the son of Ner. He is Saul's chief of staff in the army. He's actually also his cousin. And we learn here that he has crowned Ishbosheth, which is the remaining son, or one of the remaining sons, actually, of Saul. And he crowns him king. And we mentioned that he is clearly not a military genius, and he certainly wasn't someone that was in line to be king. And the very fact that Abner is the one who crowns him king and not the people, or not Ishbosheth himself, makes us wonder and assume and perhaps guess that he is actually a puppet, that it's Abner who's the real power behind the throne. And he's not the son of Saul. He's a relative of Saul, but he's not a son. And therefore he needs a son. And, we've seen many instances like this in history where a weak heir is manipulated by someone else, maybe an army person or somebody else. And this is clearly the situation here. And we see that he starts his kingdom in Machanaim, which is way in the north, okay? And he moves down over Gilead. This is in verse 9. Gilead, the Asherites, Jezreel, Ephraim, Benjamin, basically moving south down to Benjamin. And Benjamin, of course, is the tribe just to the north of Judah. In fact, the border of Judah and Benjamin runs right across the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Okay. So, and then we learned about these dates, and this was the last thing we dealt with, I believe, last week, that he reigned for 2 years, but then we learned that David reigned in Hebron for 7.5 years. Okay, so there's a bit of a discrepancy because the assumption is Ishbosheth is reigning over Israel at the same time that David is reigning in the south. And there we explained that it took him a while. See, he started in Machanaim, but then he moved his kingdom down. The assumption is it took him 5 or 5.5 years to consolidate his kingdom down. So he was only a king over all of Israel, okay, for the last 2 years. All right, and that's where we are now. Now we've met Abner, but we don't know much about him. So now we're going to see him in action. Okay, verse 12. Once Abner, son of Ner, and the soldiers of Ishbosheth, son of Saul, marched out from Machanaim to Gibeon. Gibeon is in Benjamin, and we've met Gibeon before. Gibeon, first of all, there are the Gibeonites. If you recall, Joshua, in the process of conquering the land of Israel, there's these people who fool him and say they come from a far place when they're actually Gibeonites, and they enter into an agreement with Saul. And this is the area of Nov, the city of the priests. And we remember that it's the Gibeonites who end up working there, serving the people of Israel by working in Nov. These are them. Okay, so he's coming down, and there's also that, there's an understanding that after the city of Nov is destroyed, the ark moves to Gibeon. And we know later on, there's a big altar in Gibeon, and David, is there, and Solomon. And before there's the temple, we have these special altar and ceremonies that go on in Gibeon. So we can also assume, and there are people who say this, that Gibeon may well have been like Saul's main city, his capital city, or what, don't forget, there's no Jerusalem yet. All right. So it's in his tribe, Saul's tribe, it's in Gibeon, and it is an important city. So if you think about Abner all the way in the north, he's trying to consolidate his kingdom. He's already has Ishbosheth reigning all the way down through Benjamin, but he's now going down to Gibeon. Actually, in verse 12, the way it's written in my Bible in English, once Abner, son of Ner, that once I'm not sure where it's coming from. It really should just say Abner, son of Ner, marched out from Machanaim to Gibeon. And then in verse 13, here we need to what they're saying there is Yoav, son of Tzruiah, and the soldiers of David came out. Okay, now here you can actually read this as not they came out, but they had come out. Okay, because the way the verb is written here, they left, they came out, it is more of a past perfect structure. So if you read it like that very carefully, then you'll understand that actually Yoav ended up at Gibeon first. Okay, so Yoav, the son of Tzruiah, the servant of David, went out, and they confronted each other at the pool of Gibeon. One group sat on one side of the pool and the other group on the other side of the pool. Okay, so if indeed we are going to read verse 13 carefully and realize that it's Yoav who had started and gone to Gibeon, if we realize from the previous chapters that it is Abner and Ishbosheth as his puppet king who are ruling over all of Benjamin, which of course would include Gibeon, and we know that it is David who rules only in Judea and he's ruling from Hebron, then for suddenly Yoav to show up in Gibeon, he is basically marching into enemy territory. Are they enemies? Well, they're going to be enemies now, but there's certain rival kingdoms. Okay, we have different jurisdictions here. So what we see here is that Yoav has taken the first step. He has gone to Gibeon. And then Abner says, they're getting there in Gibeon. He goes all the way from the north down south. Why? To consolidate his hold on Gibeon. He already has jurisdiction in Gibeon, but he can't let somebody else take over. And so this becomes a confrontation at a pool. And I don't know if I mentioned this last week, but I remember many years ago when we first moved to Samaria. This was in 1987, okay? And during the Feast of Tabernacles, a group of families from here got together and organized a tour. We hired a tour guide, and he says, okay, I'm going to give you a tour of Benjamin, biblical Benjamin. And we drove all over, and he took us to a place that he said was the original Gibeon, and that was an Arab village called Jib or Jabba or something like that. And there was a pool there. And he said, this is the pool. Okay. And of course, we're standing there at the edge of this pool. And when I think of this now, this is in some little village that no Jew goes into. Then this was before the first Intifada. First Intifada began just a few months later. And at that time, we drove through in and out Arab villages, and you maybe had a bit of trepidation, but you had a sense that Israel's in control, and you weren't worried about wholesale violence. And I think about that today. I would love to say, come, let's go see that pool. Unfortunately, we can't do that anymore. Okay, so they're each on one side of the pool, and this is where it gets really horrible. Abner said to Yoav, let the young men come forward and sport before us. Okay, so they translate this word sport, but actually the word is play or laugh. Yisachaku lefanenu. It is such a light-hearted word. And when you realize what they're about to do is go to battle and actually kill each other, there's something so cruel and so coarse about using this word. Abner says, yeah, let the young people play with each other when they mean kill each other. Kill each other is play, is sport. I mean, this is insane. It reminds me to a certain extent of the dueling culture that was so prevalent in Europe and particularly in England, where it was considered sport, but it had to do with pride, had to do with honor. At the end of the day, somebody got killed in a duel. And so that's what we're talking about here. And the idea is that we have two armies essentially facing each other. Abner has come down from the north, Joab has come from the south. They're facing each other. And the idea is that Abner's saying, instead of we go full-scale war against each other, take a few from this side, a few from that side, let them fight it out, and then whoever wins, wins, and then we don't have to have this full-scale battle of all these people. And there are those who compare this to Goliath and his challenge to Israel, and David coming forward. The idea being, we're just going to have two people fight it out, and whoever wins that one, that already creates a certain type of decisive victory. Now, with the Philistines, it wasn't a decisive victory. It was a decisive victory, but it didn't end the war between the Israelites and the Philistines. That war continued in many ways, but it certainly it was a decisive battle, even though only two people were fighting. And so that, it seems, was the idea. And so they had 12 from each side. They came forward. First of all, Yoav agrees. Then verse 15, they came forward and were counted off, 12 for Benjamin and Ishbosheth, son of Saul, and 12 of David's soldiers. Now remember, it says here 12 for Benjamin, and we're going to see that in other places here, there's a mention of Benjamin. They are in Gibeon. Abner may have come down with soldiers from all the other places, but clearly the main people that are fighting at his side at this point are the Benjamites, and that makes the most sense. And it's kind of interesting that he put his capital city all the way up north in Machanaim when he's basing himself on the family of Saul, which is from the kingdom of Benjamin. Now, you could say that that was actually very, very clever strategy, because on the one hand, you have your main group of people, Benjamin, is just north of Judah. And so you're right there near each other, but then you're leaving everything north of Benjamin, which is most of the country, kind of like open territory. And it could very well be that when David reached out to the people in Yavesh Gilad, which is the northernmost region, he was thinking of, okay, I'm consolidated in Judea. Saul is consolidated, or his family is consolidated right above me in Benjamin. The whole area is free. I'm going to go all the way to the north, Yavesh Gilad, and start moving south. But what happens? Abner also goes all the way to the north. He goes to Machanaim, which is actually very close to Gilead. And so he kind of closes the gap, because he has Benjamin in the north. He's got Gilead and Machanaim Benjamin in the south. He has Gilead and Machanaim in the north. And then he has an easier time crossing and controlling this whole area. So that could very well be why he goes to the north to Machanaim, because he is relying on his loyal tribe of Benjaminites. He already has those. He doesn't have to convince them of anything. Okay, so it's clear, though, when he comes down to Benjamin, that he has a built-in army. He has a built-in people of loyalists, because this is their family. Okay, so 12 for Benjamin and 12 for David. Each one grasped at his opponent's hand to thrust his dagger into his opponent's side. Thus they fell together. That place, which is in Gibeon, was called Chelkat Hatzurim. So here we have all 24 dead. Okay, 12 on this side, 12 on that side. It is a massacre. It's a slaughter. And there's no decisive victory, because they're all dead. All right, so now what happens? Right after, they go on to battle that now expands to all the armies. A fierce battle ensued that day, and Abner and the men of Israel were routed by David's soldiers. Okay, a fierce battle. Who wins? David. And now we meet a little bit, we get a better understanding of who are these people, who is Yoav, and who are these people. The three sons of Tzeruiah were there. Now remember, Yoav is the son of Tzeruiah. Tzeruiah is very interesting. Tzeruiah is David's sister. Okay, very often you have people listed as son of a man, son of their father. In this case, we realize that Tzeruiah is a woman. It's the mother, and these three young men, Yoav, Avishai, and Asael, are all brothers, sons of Tzeruiah, who is David's sister. So Yoav and these three are all David's nephews. Again, we're talking about family. Abner is a cousin of Saul, and these people are nephews of David. Okay, Asael was swift of foot, like a gazelle in the open field. And Asael ran after Abner, swerving neither right nor left in his pursuit of Abner. Abner looked back and shouted, "Is that you, Asael?" "Yes, it is," he called back. Abner said to him, "Turn to the right or to the left and seize one of our boys and strip off his tunic." But Asael would not leave off. What is Abner trying to do? He is basically saying, you can't defeat me, Asael. I am chief of, you may be a fast runner. You may be, young and energetic, but I am a master soldier. I have been the chief of staff of the king of Israel. Don't forget, David's family, they've not been officers of the king. They haven't been in a regular army. They've been part of David's men, which are more like a band of merry men than an army. And it is Abner now who's saying to him, "You're right. Don't do this, okay? Because I'm going to defeat you." And he gives him a way out. He says, "Go to somewhere else and seize one of our boys, strip off his tunic." He basically says, you can become somebody as if, well, you defeated one of, you didn't defeat Abner, but you defeated one of our soldiers. You're going to take back the tunic and say, you see, and you are able to withdraw from this battle with honor. But he wasn't willing. But Asael would not leave off. Abner again begged Asael, "Stop pursuing me, or I'll have to strike you down. How will I look your brother Joab in the face?" Okay, now this is very, very interesting, because on the one hand, Abner and Joab are facing each other in battle. They were on this pool there, but the two of them have not fought against each other. There's some kind of respect going on there between the chief of staff of each side. And Abner does not want to be in a situation where he is going to be killing one of Joab's family, his brother. He wants to keep it at a level of between the people of Judea and the people of the rest of Israel, okay? Anyway, so when he refused to desist, Abner struck him in the belly with a backward thrust of his spear, and the spear protruded from his back. He fell there and died on the spot. What does that mean? Abner continued running, and Asael continued fighting. He didn't turn around and kill him. He just went like this, or like this. While he's running forward, he takes his spear and thrusts it backward and manages to kill Asael, which is very interesting. First of all, it shows he's amazing strength and amazing skill. Asael may have been swift, but he had no way to defeat Abner when Abner had this amazing skill. But it also says that he didn't want to attack him front on. He wanted to be in a situation where it was very clear he was defending himself, that Asael was running after him. So he goes like this, keeping it so he's not running. He never gets to a position where he turns around and goes after Asael, but he continues to be in a position of defensive, which is also very interesting, that this is so important to Abner. And all who came to the place where Asael fell and died halted, but Joab and Abishai continued to pursue Abner. Okay, so what's going on now? Their brother has been killed by Abner, and so they're going to continue pursuing him, not just because he is the chief of staff of Saul's army or, Ishbosheth's army, but because now he has killed their brother. And you have this idea of the family member who is duty bound to revenge, the death of their relative. Okay. And the sun was setting as they reached the hill of Ammah, which faces Giah on the road to the wilderness of Gibeon. The Benjamites rallied behind Abner, forming a single company, and they took up a position on the top of the hill. So here again, we see how important the unity of the Benjamin tribe is, the people who are standing with Abner. And they form like this wall around him, and they stand there at the top of the hill. So first of all, they have seized a very strategic position, and Abner is standing there not by himself, but with his whole people, his army. Abner then called out to Yoav, must the sword devour forever? You know how bitterly it's going to end. How long will you delay ordering your troops to stop the pursuit of their kinsmen? And actually, the word here in the Hebrew is brothers. How long will you delay in ordering your troops to stop the pursuit of their brothers? Okay, so on the one hand, it looks today as if we interpreted verse 13 to say that Yoav was the one who first went to Gibeon, to the pool, and it is Abner who responds by saying, oh, no, he's being provocative. We've got to make sure we hold on to our territory, that Yoav started this. On the other hand, it is Abner who first suggests to Yoav, let our boys play it out, at this pool, which starts the actually killing massacre. So now we see Abner is the first one to try to call it halts. He said, no, why are we going on like this? Okay. And it's a very mixed message here, because on the one hand, there's certain nobility about Abner, and he doesn't want Asael. He doesn't want to kill Asael. He doesn't want to kill Yoav. And now he's just trying to stop the whole war. And in addition, he may not have been the one who issued the first provocation. So that's Abner. On the other hand, Abner is the one who first seized the kingdom. He's the one who puts Ishbosheth in that place as a puppet king. Why does he have to do that? Okay, Ishbosheth wasn't looking for a king for himself. There was no rallying cry coming from the nation of Israel. God forbid we should have David as our king. We need our own king. Basically, it's Abner who splits the kingdom. Now, we always talk about a split of the kingdom after Solomon's death, but this is the first split in the kingdom. After Saul was the king of an entire Israel, now Saul actually creates the original problem by chasing David. David then, the people of Judea are in a very interesting or uncomfortable situation. On the one hand, they want to remain loyal subjects to Saul. They are not rebelling against Saul, but on the other hand, they do protect to some extent their kinsman David, as he's being the enemy of the king. But it's certainly not a civil war, and it's certainly not a situation where one tribe is trying to have a separate kingdom from the other tribe. But this is exactly what happens after Saul's death, and it is Abner who starts that. So that Abner is a complicated character, like parts of him are very noble and very good, and parts of him are very problematic. And I think that's what we're seeing here. Anyway, what is Yoab's reply? As God lives, if you hadn't spoken up, the troops would have given up the pursuit of their brothers only the next morning. Again, he's talking about his brothers. Okay, he's kind of he's kind of being kind of ironic here. He's sarcastic. Oh, if you hadn't stood up, the troops would have already stopped fighting long ago. What is he referring here to? Okay, he's saying, you were the one who started this. You were the one who started this at the pool and said, let's all fight. Okay, if you hadn't done that, we would have given, this pursuit would never have even continued. So basically, Abner on the one hand is the first one to call for a ceasefire. Yoab is the one who blames him for starting the fight to begin with. Yoab then sounded the horn and all the troops halted. They ceased their pursuit of Israel and stopped the fighting. But indeed, despite Yoab's resentment of Abner, he agreed ceasefire. Abner and his men marched through the Arava all the night, and after crossing the Jordan, they marched through all of Bitron until they came to Machanaim. After Yoab gave up the pursuit of Abner, he assembled all the troops and found 19 of David's soldiers missing, besides Asael. So we learned that on David's side of the battle, he lost 20 men, 19 plus Asael. David's soldiers, on the other hand, defeated the Benjaminites and the men under Abner and killed 360 men. They bore Asael away and buried him in his father's tomb in Bethlehem. Then Yoab and his men marched all night. Day broke upon them in Hebron. So first of all, you see here that we're getting a very clear message. Abner is a problematic character. Yoab is a problematic character, but they're each representing their kings, so to speak. Abner is representing the lineage of Saul through his puppet king Ishbosheth, but Joab is representing David. And what we're seeing here is clearly Saul is on his way to defeat, and David is on his way to victory. The Benjamites lost 360 men. David's people, on the other hand, lost 20. So there's a huge difference there. Now, one of the teachers that I have followed brings up a brilliant point here. And if you notice, we have them both going all night, okay? So first we have Joab blowing the shofar, and he says they marched through the Arava all night. No, excuse me. Let me, verse 29, first we're talking about Abner. Abner, they go all night, and they end up in Machanaim. On the other hand, Joab, we learn here, when his men, they carried, look at verse 32, they carried Asael and buried him, okay, in Bethlehem. They walked all night, Joab and his men walked all night, and how did they end up? Day broke upon them in Hebron. Now, the word in Hebrew is beautiful because it doesn't say day broke, it says, and light came upon them in Hebron. So this is something very interesting. They each going opposite directions. They're going all night, both of them. But when Abner gets back, no, he just arrives in the town. We don't know anything about light or dark or whatever. But when David ends up arriving in Hebron, we have light. And again, another reference to where the story is going and where the Bible wants it to go. And there's a beautiful, I think, a beautiful comparison to a similar nighttime trek. Remember, we learned about this at the end of 1 Samuel, the parallel nighttime trek of Saul and David. So if you look okay, both of them go with both David and Saul. So let's look at chapter 28, 1 Samuel, chapter 28, verse 8. This is Saul going to visit the woman at Endor. So remember, he comes to her at night. And at the end of that story, we learn at the very end of that story, this is chapter 28, verse 25. Then they rose and left the same night. Okay, so their journey begins at night and ends at night. On the other hand, remember the same time this is going on, David is going all night to find the Amalekites, and he's going to encounter them in war the next morning. So we have that in chapter 29, verse 10, okay? And they have also walked all night, which we see earlier. Okay, I don't, right, okay, we see that they marched all night, but I don't see exactly where it says that. But I remember we did study this, we talked about this, whatever. But we see they arrived in the morning, verse 10. Rise early in the morning, you and your large servants who come with you. Rise early in the morning and leave as soon as it is light. Accordingly, David's men, oh no, excuse me, this is something else. This is when they leave. And we see that they're basically traveling all night to get to Ziklag, but they end up coming back. They come back during the night, during the day, and where is that? Here we are. So from the, okay, anyway, I'm not finding exactly where it says it, but we did this already about how they came back. Pardon?
Sorry, is it 1 Samuel 29:10?
1 Samuel 29:10 says, rise early in the morning, you and your Lord's servants who came with you, rise early in the morning and leave as soon as it is light. Right. So that's the light part of it, but this is before the battle. the battles also they go at night and whatever. But it's the idea. In other words, David's battle is greeted with an expression of light in the same way that David's men coming back to Hebron are greeted with an expression of light, whereas Saul remains in the dark. Okay, Saul, the night of the woman in Endor, and he's just in the dark. There is no light. And the same thing here when Abner goes back, he goes all night and there is no light. And this is just a beautiful expression of the fact what we are witnessing now is David coming into his own. This is where God wants him to be. David is going to rule over all of Israel. And that is where God wants him to be. He's already been anointed. And what we're seeing this play out. It hasn't happened yet. It hasn't finished yet. It's going to keep going. And if we look at the first verse of chapter 3, which is really part of it shouldn't be a new chapter there. The chapter should start later on. The war between the house of Saul and the house of David was long drawn out, but David kept growing stronger while the house of Saul grew weaker. That indeed is the summary of this whole thing that we've seen. The beginning of a civil war, the splitting in the kingdom, but now, little by little, we're going to come to a conclusion where David will end up being the winner. That's it for today. We will pick up with chapter 3, verse 2 next week. Any comments?
Maybe
Okay.
you could
Yes, Alison.
I was going to say, because sometimes you've made this thought before about night and darkness with Saul. I don't know, maybe there might be some mileage in having a study part B where you just look at the theme of light and darkness in its own right. That could be of interest, and then we might get the whole picture.
Right. No, absolutely. I don't know if it's enough for a whole study. I haven't checked that. I mean, I saw these two things going on. There's no question, though, there's so many different expressions of the defeat of Saul.
I don't know, because sometimes you say something which you take for granted, which I want to think about for the next hour.
So go do it. Come back to us next week.
But
bring us the verses that make sense. That'd be great.
I'll leave that to Carol. You can do that, Carol. You've got the time.
I was just going to say that
Mordecai, Mordok. Go on.
No, I wanted
what
to
were you saying?
The idea of using night to get the advantage in battle. I think the Israelites were pretty good at that. And if you go back to Joshua chapter 8, you've got Joshua taking Ai, and he sets lies in wait at night, and then waits in the valley during the overnight, and then attacks the next morning. But he takes advantage of darkness to set the ambush the other side of Ai. And I just think that's an earlier example of how they use a tactical advantage.
Yeah, no question. I think that the description of David going out to battle from Ziklag, going to the Amalekites, no question, the night is a strategic advantage because he's going to surprise them. And also something to remember about what was going on there is that David had marched off with Achish, the king of the Philistines, to do battle against Saul. Now, he was trying to figure out how am I going to get out of this, right? Okay. And when they get up there, basically the other Philistine princes tell Achish, no, we don't want this guy. We don't trust him. And he gets sent back. Okay. And I read recently, I thought it was very interesting. The Amalekites would have been kind of looking out and laying, in other words, they suddenly go to Ziklag, they cart off the women, they cart off all the property, the jewels, whatever it is that was there. And clearly they're watching, they have spies, they know what's going on. So they see David marching off to the north, leave the women and children behind. And they say, oh, they're going to be busy for a while up there until, they're going to be engaged in battle. And so they're surprised. They're not expecting that David's going to come back so soon. So they go in and they take their stuff and then they move on, and they're not running because they have plenty of time until, David comes back. So David clearly is taking advantage of the situation when he marches all night, when they have no no expectation that he's already come back south. And then, from there, he, of course, surprises them at daylight. So no question, that is what's going on. But what I think is particularly significant is it in our chapter 2, verse 32, at the very end, where it says, and light came upon them in Hebron. That kind of yells out, there's light. And so that enables us to look backwards at the dark of David, but that they're, at daybreak, they actually are there ready for battle. And at the same time, to see the contrast with Abner and with Saul, who are still in the night. So I think it's just seeing that night at two different levels. Claudette, yes.
Yeah, I would like to think that the light is not literal but spiritual. That David's life became, he always had God on his side.
Well, I think it's both, because it does
It is both, but you can see
it
the
says
spiritual
they marched
life.
all night. So if they marched all night, it's very normal
that's
that
the
they
literal
get to
one.
Hebron at daybreak. But it didn't say they got to Hebron in the morning. It says the light came upon them. It doesn't even say sun. It doesn't say it. No question. No question. There's like this shining light of God that is saying, this is the man I favor. This is where I put my light. Yes, 100%. Okay. Anyway,
Thank you so much.
have a great weekend. We are going to celebrate Purim this weekend.
Yes,
So,
I'm looking forward to it.
Any of you want to enjoy with us, read the book of Esther and thank God for
Yes.
victory, and keep in mind that we are dealing
will
today with a horrible Haman and his
Yes.
men out there in Gaza and all around us in Lebanon. And so we pray that in the same way that God brought amazing victory through natural means, in the book of Esther, that God will also enable our armies to get amazing victory, knowing that God is the one who is engineering all of that. Amen. See you next week.
Amen.
Amen.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Amen.
Bye-bye.
Bye.